Matthew Brooks was on a rough flight from Washington to Dallas, dealing with a young child sitting behind him who wouldn't stop crying. He tried to understand why she was upset but couldn't tell if she really needed help or just wanted to make noise. Frustrated, Matthew recorded the girl's behavior, thinking about posting it on social media to get sympathy from his followers. He didn't realize that this would catch the attention of the authorities and lead to unexpected problems. The loud noise of the plane's engines made it hard to hear the child's cries, which had started long before takeoff. As the flight went on, her wails became louder and more annoying, ruining any chance of peace. Tired and irritated, Matthew decided to film his experience with his phone. As the plane flew higher, the child's cries pierced through the cabin like an alarm. She looked to be about 2 years old and seemed focused on crying as loudly as possible. Wanting a break, Matthew pointed his camera at the source of this frustration. He thought about sharing his situation online, hoping for support from other travelers who might have faced similar issues. As he recorded the toddler, his hands shook with frustration, making the video shaky. He didn't explain much, just mentioned that it had been hours of the same thing. Often active on social media, Matthew looked for validation from his followers, hoping they would understand his frustration and provide him with some online support during this tough time. However, events would escalate far sooner than he anticipated. It started with a viral video. Matthew's online community didn't see eye to eye with his views on the distressed child featured in the footage he shared, accompanied by a fiery caption. The clip quickly gained traction online. Many sympathized with Matthew's frustration and criticized the child's parents. However, when the girl's identity became known, things took an unexpected turn. Matthew found himself under the scrutiny of the authorities, leading to consequences he never anticipated. Matthew's situation could have taken a different turn. Despite being immersed in his role as a social media influencer in Washington for months, he longed to reconnect with his family in Dallas, Texas. His online presence, boasting thousands of followers drawn to his vibrant vlogs and restaurant critiques, had kept him busy. However, as the holiday season approached, his heart yearned for the warmth of familial bonds. As Matthew settled into his seat aboard the plane, eager for his journey back home, the thrum of the jet's engines underscored his anticipation of reuniting with loved ones. However, his excitement was soon interrupted by the unexpected wails of a pigtail blonde toddler seated behind him, crying incessantly and catching him off guard. Matthew maintained a positive outlook, believing that the young girl's tears were merely a temporary issue. He put on his noise-canceling headphones and started a podcast to drown out the disruptive noise. Encountering a weeping child on a plane wasn't uncommon, but Matthew had never faced it himself until now. He optimistically assumed it would resolve soon, unaware that this inconvenience would drastically change his circumstances. Passengers settled into their seats, bracing themselves for the long flight ahead, while one small girl continued to cry unabated. Despite Matthew's best efforts to drown out the noise with his headphones, her wails pierced through, frustrating him as he wished he had chosen a different flight. Little did he know, this day was about to take another unforeseen turn. Matthew hoped fervently that the young girl's fear would subside as the plane ascended to its cruising altitude. He surmised that her distress stemmed from the rapid ascent during takeoff. Removing one earbud, he strained to hear any signs of quiet from her. Instead, the shrieks persisted, growing louder and more desperate. What had begun as mere tears had escalated into inconsolable sobs. Matthew reluctantly accepted the grim truth. His flight was bound for a turbulent journey. His patience was gradually eroding as the minutes dragged on. Usually, he would walk away from such situations to give himself some peace of mind, but being 30,000 feet in the sky meant he was stuck in place with the little girl. There was nothing more he could do but sit tight and pray that whoever was watching her would soothe her quickly. If this were a bus, Matthew would have gotten off at the nearest stop. He would have boarded another bus or even gotten an Uber to where he was headed. But given that he was on a plane, he couldn't do much but sit and pray. However, the child's crying worsened with every passing hour. It was as if she was determined to make Matthew lose his cool. He wondered if the child knew she was making a scene and ruining everyone's flight, but then he remembered she was just a child, barely aware of where she was or what she was doing. The blame solely fell on her parent or guardian, whoever was watching over her. It would be this individual with whom Matthew struck up a conversation. He had no clue what he was getting himself into. Turning back, Matthew reached over his seat, locking eyes with the child's dad. He didn't see her mom anywhere. He noticed just how puffy and red the little girl's eyes were and concluded that the dad didn't care for her crying. After a quick greeting, Matthew politely pointed out that the crying was becoming uncomfortable and was taxing on the girl. But the dad shrugged it off and told Matthew to mind his business. Matthew tried to point out that the girl was tired and would end up with a sore throat if she continued crying like this. He also insisted that her crying had everyone on the plane worried. But by now, it was clear that the girl's dad just didn't care. With a stern face, he asked Matthew to turn around, warning him that if he looked back again, he would regret it. Stifling his frustration, Matthew tried to focus on his podcast, attempting to ignore the relentless cries. He glanced around, hoping for an ally among the passengers, but most seemed indifferent or resigned to their fate. He contemplated complaining to the flight attendants but feared escalating the situation. He'd also noted something that flooded his system with sweltering fear while talking to the man. Matthew observed the significant differences between him and the little girl. While he could agree that sometimes kids look nothing like their biological parents, he couldn't deny that wasn't the case here. The man shared zero physical traits with the child. In fact, the two were from distinct ethnic groups, with nothing tying them together. There wasn't the odd nose or ear shape that suggested they could have been related, nor was there a match in the way their eyes were sized or spaced. Matthew quickly dismissed the troubling thought, as he had never focused on race before and didn't want to start now. He realized that considering it might have changed the outcome, he put on his podcast and turned up the volume, trying to ignore his concerns about the man's relationship with the girl. Despite his efforts, his gut urged him to seek help, but he felt he had no solid reason to believe something was wrong. As the hours passed, the girl's crying only grew louder, adding to his unease. But now she seemed tired and withdrawn, sobbing for prolonged periods of time. She'd break the monotony by crying again, using the full power of her young lungs and voice box. Slowly but gradually, the thought of the man not being related to her had evaporated from Matthew's mind. He had no clue that this flight was about to be cut short. As the persistent wails echoed through the cabin, Matthew's optimism transformed into frustration. The child's cries seemed to intensify, grating on his nerves with each passing minute. Desperate for peace, he decided to document the ordeal, recording snippets of the distressed child in the hope of sharing his relatable experience with his online community. Matthew edited a short video showcasing the difficulties of traveling with a crying child, hoping his followers would relate and share their own experiences. To his surprise, the video went viral on TikTok, attracting unexpected attention. As comments poured in, some users mentioned seeing the child in Amber Alerts, revealing she had been missing for 2 days. This made Matthew recall that the man with her didn't resemble her at all. Panic set in as he realized the gravity of the situation, prompting him to close TikTok and take action. His first order of business was to send an alert to the authorities about the child's whereabouts. Next, he discreetly informed the flight attendant of what was happening. He showed her the Amber Alert, and the attendant ran to the cockpit to inform the pilots. The pilots made an emergency landing where the authorities were waiting. As soon as the plane landed, they sprang on the man, who by now knew something had gone terribly wrong for him. The authorities began asking the important questions, and a few minutes later, with a little digging into the whole story, they discovered that the man was the little girl's mother's boyfriend. The mother and the girl's father were estranged after a nasty divorce, and the mother had her boyfriend pick up the daughter without the father's permission. The girl didn't want to go and was distressed throughout the flight. While Matthew had initially thought the man might not be the girl's father due to their dissimilar appearances, the truth was far more sinister. The child's mother had betrayed the trust of the father, using her boyfriend to pick up the distressed girl without his knowledge. The situation took a dark turn as the authorities detained the mother's boyfriend and created a direct link to the child's father. The mother was contacted immediately, and arrangements were made for the father to be reunited with his daughter. The revelation of the whole situation left everyone on the flight speechless, transforming a routine journey into a rescue mission. The little girl, now in her father's arms, gradually calmed down. Matthew felt a mix of relief and responsibility for his unexpected role in revealing the truth during a midday rescue. News outlets picked up the story, turning his ordinary flight into a viral sensation. The online community praised him for his crucial, albeit unintentional, involvement. Reflecting on the power of social media, Matthew vowed to use his platform more responsibly, recognizing its real-life impact. The incident became a turning point for him, encouraging positive change and awareness. The girl's father expressed gratitude, and as passengers boarded the plane again, they felt a new understanding of how virtual actions can have real-world consequences.